This morning, on the day that we are recording this episode for you, the killing of the CEO of United Healthcare happened in broad daylight outside a Hilton hotel in Midtown Manhattan. The direct result of gunshot wounds by an unknown gunman still at large. But enough about that. Now, what is it they say? No one mourns the wicked, I think? Something like that. Yes, Wicked, the book turned movie, fan fiction turned Broadway musical, turned movie musical, is finally here. And with me to discuss this today is none other than Aaron. How do you pronounce your last name? This is crazy.
So there's like two ways to pronounce it. One of them is Butwinick and the other is Butwinick. So I say Butwinick, so I guess we'll go with that today.
I like that. With me here to discuss Wicked is Aaron Butwinick. I feel like that has a little fun rhyme to it.
Right?
Aaron, remind us who you are and what you're all about.
Yeah, so I'm a DP based here in LA, and I'm so excited to be back on the podcast. This is my second appearance, and I'm beyond excited to talk about Wicked because to all the listeners out there, Kim and I have been totally so excited for this movie for a very long time. We saw it together about a week and a half ago, and I'm just very excited to just spill everything.
Yeah, clearly we both hated the movie. Clearly we're just
Oh,
gonna
it's
rant and
terrible.
rave about how
Yeah.
Wicked sucked. Wicked
Mhm.
sucked, dude.
Mm-mm.
No, incredible, absolutely incredible. Everything I wanted and
A
more.
plus,
And
10
I feel
10.
like you and I felt the same as we left the theater. We were just like, beautiful, loved it.
Yep.
Amazing. Okay, so my first question to start us off, you and I have already talked about this, but for the audience, um, are you a Galinda or an Elfie?
I am definitely an Elfie. So, when I was growing up, I grew up with Wicked. That was my sister and I's, like, bread and butter. That was our musical, and my sister always like, we would sing the songs together, like, every night after dinner to my parents, like, full-on performances, and I was always Elphaba, and she was always Glinda. So, I don't know, I think Elfie has the best songs in the musical, and I don't know, I just like her vibe. She's fiery, and she's resilient, and she's just honestly a badass, and she fucking rocks, so I'm pro
Yeah,
Elfie. Are
10
you
out of
Glinda
10. She's
or no?
very
Oh,
much
wait, you
a hero.
oh,
We talked about this. I
yeah,
feel like you could default me a little bit to a Galinda because I'm blonde and because I can be kind of like
right.
that. I feel like a mix at times. I feel like I can't associate super strongly with Elfie because I don't know. I love Elfie and I do feel like there are times where I have that strength in me and I have that power and I have that no, I'm going to stand up for this. But then I have times where I'm also kind of Galinda where I don't have the tools or I'm just not strong enough in that moment
Totally,
to stand up for what's right. So I kind of waver and I don't know. I love
100%.
both of them in their own ways. I would love to associate closer with Elfie, but I
Mhm.
also think that's just my personal savior complex, which makes me more of a Galinda.
Yeah,
So a
I
little
feel
bit
you.
of both.
Yeah.
All right. So Aaron, what was your favorite quote and or lyric from the movie? Because obviously, there are quotes, there is a good amount of dialogue in this film, but it's a musical. 90% of the thing is
Right.
music. So favorite quote or lyric?
Yes. So, I thought about this a lot, and this isn't necessarily my favorite quote or lyric in general about the whole production, but I chose this specific lyric, or I guess it is a quote in a song. It's spoken, it's not sung. Um, but it's more only like the line delivery that I think is so powerful and so well done that's very different from the stage musical. And it's during Defying Gravity, and it's towards the beginning of the song when Elfie and Glinda are kind of arguing with one another about basically what just happened, like her basically leaving everything that she had created and gone to the wizard for, and she says, "You can have all you've ever wanted," and then Elphaba says, "I know," and the way that she says it is so kind of gut-wrenching, where
Mhm.
it's very much she's aware that she's throwing everything away, but she cares so much about the animals and kind of her ethics that she's willing to throw everything that she could have away, and she knows that that's just part of her being, and then she goes on to say, "But I don't want it," because Glinda's like, "Why are you doing this? You're throwing everything away, like, everything that we built together," and it's just such a beautiful line delivery because I think what this movie does so well and what Cynthia Erivo does so well is she's such a talented actress on the stage and also in film. She brings a lot of the very kind of closeness and emotion in her face and in her dialogue that you might not get in a stage musical because we get that's the power of film is that you can get close-ups, you can see the emotions and faces, and she just
Mm.
does such a good job of portraying what these characters are feeling because we get so much more time with these characters because the first act is the same length as the entire musical with intermission. So we have a lot
Yeah.
more time to really understand these characters, and I think her line delivery here is so powerful, and it's the most powerful song in the musical and arguably the best song in the musical. And it just really shows her character and what she's willing to do to fight for what she stands for. So that is my quote or lyric slash quote. They're the
It's
second part of it
it's kind
sort
of
of
all the
sucks,
same.
a little
Yeah.
bit, a
It's a
little
little
operatic.
semantic thing to, like, try and
Yeah,
separate them, but in
yeah,
this context, they're pretty much the same thing. So,
right,
yeah.
right.
Hell yeah. And I mean, like, that is one of the best moments of this film. Not to say that, like, every moment isn't the best moment because it's constantly perfect the entire way through.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, like, that's like the changing moment for Elphaba. So of
Yeah.
course it has to be like the powerhouse moment of the musical, of the film, of
Mhm,
everything is that moment, like you're talking about, where she goes from, I had this very particular
mhm.
dream, so to speak, and
And
now I've
Vision
reached a
of the
point where it's
Wizard
like my
too.
heart isn't saying that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she viewed
It's
the wizard as
beautiful.
this god, everyone did, and then she quickly realizes he's a fraud, and I think the beauty of these lines is I think the way she says it kinda grills it into Glinda's mind where she accepts that Elphaba doesn't want what Glinda wants, and it's kind of I think the song is also Glinda's accepting that's, like, we're gonna go on our different paths, and that's okay. Um,
Yes. Let's
yeah.
talk about this whole moment. And I know we're kind of starting at the end and we'll like work our way backwards,
Mhm. Yeah.
but all of Defying Gravity, all of that, the peak, the apex, the climax of this film was, I think, so perfectly well done, so paced well. And it was like they
Mhm.
broke the song up a little bit
Totally.
more to have these spaces for the emotion to really build and for you to really feel it. There's been a lot of talk about this, right? And I think we all kind of understand the feeling and the emotion of that scene. Um, I don't know who it was talking. Somebody was talking the other day. No, it was Ariana Grande. I was listening to the Las Culturistas episode with Ariana Grande, and she mentioned specifically she was using the words, "Oh, she doesn't have the tools," which I think is something we kind of use in daily life. We sort of use that terminology. I might have used it a minute ago,
Mhm.
like literally copying what she said, but she mentions how Galinda doesn't have the tools to do what Elfie is doing in this moment or to like reach that point of, that sort of just character growth, self-discovery, that like powerful moment. And I was thinking about it the other day because it's like, yes, she doesn't have the tools, and yet there's all of this like sadness and pride in her. And it's of course because they have this beautiful close friendship. And I just like was thinking it's also not only Galinda recognizing that she doesn't have the tools, but being so proud of Elfie for having those tools.
Mhm.
And like, even
Yeah,
though we can, rightfully kind of shit on Galinda for not being there when she was needed or when it would have been
yeah.
most powerful for her to be there, we can also recognize like it is incredibly powerful for Elphaba to be doing what she's doing. And
Mhm.
that is such a powerful, amazing thing that not everybody has. And so for that moment of like that recognition of like I can see how amazing you are being right now and I love this for you and I can't wait to see where you're going. I'm sorry that I'm not there. It's just like
Mhm.
this balance. Does that make sense? Like you
Yeah,
can recognize that
for
somebody has
sure.
something amazing even if you don't have it. I think that's what's cool about it is that not everybody does have that power. It is something amazing.
Mhm.
It is something that makes her
Yeah,
such a force.
and I would argue that's Glinda's character growth is like, accepting her friend doing something incredible that she doesn't have the tools to do. It's her being like, "You know what? I'm gonna be secondary. I'm gonna be the sidekick essentially in this scenario," because her whole life she's always been the star. She's been the superhero, and I feel like Defying
Mhm.
Gravity is the moment where she's finally letting, well, that's not totally true. She was gonna let Elfie go to see the wizard, go to Emerald City on her own. I guess that's was the start of it, but this, I think, was the kind of the climax of it, where she's kind of taking a backseat approach that she never really does. Like, she's always the leader. She's always the first one in line, the with the best grades, the best performance, whatever. And this is her saying, like, this is a time where I'm not fit for this. This is not me, and I gotta let you defy gravity, do your thing, be powerful, be progressive, be as ethical as you want to be. And I think I have some qualms with like Glinda's character development throughout the story, and how it felt a little bit different than the musical, and kind of how they did that with her. But in general, I was impressed by how Ariana Grande was able to kind of shift her character pretty well, like, from the beginning to this to the middle to the end. Like, I was very impressed by what she was able to do with that character, but also still
Yeah.
maintaining the kind of Glinda moments. Like,
Yeah.
no
The
one
little, like,
changes
dips of
that.
humor.
Yeah, like, no one changes that rapidly. Like, I really liked how there were moments where you're like, that there's still Glinda in there. Like, there's still the kind of,
Yeah.
someone might
Even
say,
in
"No,
even
this
in,
is
like, the
Christopher."
sleepover after the Ozdust Bowl, it was like obviously, the Ozdust Bowl scene is a major character change for Glinda and in some ways Elphaba. Um,
Yes.
it's that beautiful moment. They become friends. There's this like I watched it twice now, I've cried both times, and it's one of those things I feel like every time I see that
Oh, the
scene, I'm gonna
dance.
cry because it's so perfect. But, like, that scene happens, they brew this beautiful friendship overnight sort of thing, and then they have, like, this really cute sleepover scene where they're, like, kinda opening up a little bit more to each other, but you can
Mhm,
even tell in that, like, yes, there's been this huge stride made between these 2 characters, and yet there's still kind of awkwardness. Galinda's teasing Elfie in a way that she's not comfortable with and not used to, and so they have that kinda, like, awkwardness, but it doesn't, like,
mhm,
kill either of them, because 'cause they've still grown a little bit. But yeah,
yeah,
exactly like you're saying, you can it's really great how you see moments of character development, but it doesn't fully change a person overnight. And it happens in bits and pieces. Any type of journey, it's not linear. It's always like you will have these ebbs and flows, like kind of like a
yeah,
redemption arc in that way too, where it's like you're
mhm,
never going to just like, straight go for the gold. It's like you need moments where you're like, okay, I'm figured it out. I'm not quite there yet. I'm still pretty much me. Oh, I figured it out a bit more. And it's like really settling in.
mhm,
But I love that because you do get to see, and in just like in this whole film, it's so it's a fantasy film. It's magic. There's,
mhm,
animals can talk. It's this beautiful, amazing, like
yeah,
crazy, gorgeous technical world. And yet the themes and the characters are so real, which is
mhm,
kind of hilarious for that,
yeah.
like,
I
or
was
that, like, yeah.
I totally agree. I was talking to my sister about this because I had seen the film. I've seen it twice now. I saw it with my family over Thanksgiving, and something that she and I were talking about was the way that the actors, I guess the direction too, the way that they portrayed Oz in the whole Wicked universe. They made it so believable, and so they made us care about Oz.
Mhm.
They really delved into the politics of Oz, and the racism and the bigotry, and just the really everything that can kind of be wrong in a society, like, existed in Oz. And I don't know, they really made me feel strongly about that universe that is so fantastical. And my past knowledge of it is like The Wizard of Oz, which just a fun family movie, but this one they really get into, like, they make you care about these characters. They make you care about Dr. Dillamond, and they make you care about kind of this bubbling catastrophe happening with the animals and everything. Like, I was very impressed by that. And I think we chatted about
Mhm.
this after we saw the movie, but it has a similar effect to how the Hunger Games universe is so
I'm
cared
so
about,
glad
like,
we finally got to Hunger Games.
right?
I knew we would at some point. We talked
Like,
about it
the
a lot.
universe
Yes,
exactly, and, like, Kim and I, we love the Hunger Games. That's our I love that series, 'cause I
because
think
we're
what I
good
love most,
people. We get it.
right?
We
Of
have good
course.
tastes.
And it's just what I love about it is that it's so like, the characters are really powerful, but it's like the universe they're in is so well established, and I felt that the director did a really good job of making us care about Oz and see that the story is beyond the witches of Oz, but it's like the actual universe and how they interact with it and the university and everything. So I was honestly very impressed by that and made me care about the movie more and honestly kind of take it more seriously, if that makes sense. Like I feel like a lot of people
Yeah.
are seeing it less of this like big movie musical, but it's like an actual good story that there's a lot of themes you can unpack and character development, character analysis. There's a lot there.
There was a ton of care, I think, given to the story at large and just all of the individual characters, which of course, and it comes through the screen, you see it, you feel it, like we're talking about. I mean, obviously, our two main characters are two actresses were incredibly passionate about their roles, and God
Mhm,
bless, because this is one of the types of stories and one of the films that really needed that. You really needed somebody who was not only talented in what they needed to be talented in, and of course, like fit the role in the physicality that they needed to, but you needed someone who like so clearly in their heart loved their character to bring it to
mhm.
life. And it was like there's so many different interviews with these two, and there's thoughts online and stuff, and
We could do
we
a
kind of
whole
like
other
lost
podcast
the
about
plot
the
for a
press
minute.
tour.
Right, yeah. We like lost the plot for a minute too when, they were talking about, I think, like, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo were rightfully very emotional on some of the press tour, and so, like, there was joking about that and whatever, but, like, honestly, I mean, we're theater kids, right? That's what it is anyways, like, that's
We
theater
get
kid life.
emo.
You are
We get
passionate about what
emo.
you
Yeah.
do. Yeah. And then also I love how, like, any large scale press tour like this, any, like, blockbuster film press tour, when it gets to that kinda, like, little bump in the road where, like, all of a sudden people are annoyed with it and they're coming up with shit to be more annoyed with, it can get really, like, crazy. Don't Worry, Darling was one of those where there was drama that just, like,
That
led into
gate,
more
yeah,
drama and drama, and it's
yeah,
ultimately nothing, like, too terrible, and yet, that, like, kind of wrecked the film in a lot of ways. But this one, they,
yeah.
like, kinda lost their footing for a minute, and then everyone kinda was just like, "Actually, I'm really excited for Wicked, and, like, this looks fun, and I guess I'll go see it, and whatever." And we really started to just, like, hold space for the
Eh,
lyrics of Defying Gravity, and I think that's what brought us back to
I
just this
mean,
beautiful press tour, this beautiful story.
to to use that quote, I literally chose lyrics from Defying Gravity, and I guess we did hold space for it, so
We did. We
we
did.
we
It's
have
it's
held space.
heavy. Heavy
Yeah.
to hold that space.
Mhm. We're this is queer
Beautiful.
media.
It's all media is queer media, like, let's be totally honest.
Literally,
Oh my god,
especially
there
for
are
film.
so many gays in this film. Love at who's not gay in this movie? Name 2 people who aren't gay in this movie. You can't. You can maybe name 1.
Ariana Grande? She
Yes. So far as we know,
Yeah, but
Ariana
Cynthia
Grande is straight.
Erivo is queer, Jonathan Bailey, obviously. Um, the woman who played Nessa has a girlfriend, and who else? Yeah, everyone's gay in this
Bowen
movie.
Yang,
Bowen
King.
Yang, um, yeah, everyone's gay in this whole movie, which
Everyone's
is
gay. Every
which
single person is
is
gay.
which is why it makes them such great actors because they're all playing a lot of heterosexual relationships, and I'm like, it was so believable. I was like,
And
"Oh,
that's the most theater kid thing you could possibly do. Yeah, exactly.
that's what we did." That's a sign of a good actor, 'cause I thought Elphaba and Fiero's relationship, like, they had such good chemistry.
Oh,
Like, you
yeah.
could tell that they were friends on set. Like, I was like, "I believe this. I see it, and I love it."
And Jonathan Bailey is notoriously excellent at creating chemistry with his cast member. I think I saw an interview where Cynthia Erivo was talking about how it's because he can really, really open himself up. He can really
Mm,
reach that vulnerability and allow himself to feel that chemistry. And so it's a two-way street. She was mentioning how, he has to sort of offer himself in this way, and you as the other half of that need to also offer yourself in that way. And you could tell that both of them did because, like, technically they really only have 2 or 3 scenes together, 2 or
mm,
3 kind of moments together, and
yeah.
yet you felt that. I feel like in any other film where 2 main characters would have that little screen time together, I wouldn't really be able to, like, latch on to that emotion. but it was like important things happened in their scenes together. And
Yeah,
also, those actors were both excellent at being vulnerable and
yeah,
open and ready to accept that chemistry.
I
It was
agree.
beautiful. Good times. Okay, so going back for a second, I need to mention because it's incredibly important, and I don't know if I mentioned this when you and I actually saw the film, but loved the film. It was beautiful. I had this moment at the very, very end where I almost wanted to like chuckle for a second, even in like the deep emotion of Defying Gravity, because we watched this whole movie and it's epic and it's tearing at your heartstrings and it's just gorgeous. And you get to Defying Gravity, which is of course the pinnacle. We can talk forever and ever about how it's like it hurts in like a good way, you know?
Mhm.
So you watch all of Defying Gravity, and then she has that powerhouse note, the war cry, that incredible moment that just chills all across the theater. We like opposite of crescendo. I don't know the word off the top of my head. We like opposite of crescendo down with the
Big
music, kind of like,
crescendo?
sinking us back into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it just like not necessarily with the volume or anything, but just with the actual like we had this beautiful upscale moment. Let's kind of
Mhm.
like dip us down to the credits. And then she's on her broomstick and she zooms off and she's flying and we're like, yes, she's free. Oh my god, we're gonna get to part two. And then she full on fucking like double times it into turbo mode.
Oh, yeah.
I
Mhm.
like wanted to laugh so hard, but I was like, no, don't break the moment. Like everyone's having the moment.
Uh,
And she's like, do 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 do, like pew pew. And I'm just like,
it's
she just went to turbo mode.
okay, it's so funny you
It's great.
mentioned that because in true Aaron fashion, I like if I like a movie, I need to see it more than once and I get obsessed with it. And
That's
so
why we
like
have a list.
exactly.
Plug,
And the
not a
night
plug.
the night that we saw the film, I looked up on TikTok, like, that last scene, I was like, "I need to see this scene again," i.e. the last minute of Defying Gravity, so from, like, Battle Cry to I don't wanna s is this s there's, like, a little added section towards the end of Defying Gravity that is in the film, but not in the stage musical, um, and I was watching this clip and I was like, "Oh, I found it again." And when you as you just mentioned, when she goes into turbo mode, there you can literally hear like a
She breaks the sound barrier.
yeah, and I was like, "It sounds like she's like revving up a car." And I was like, "That's a really interesting sound effect choice." I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay." Like, and then she like bolts off and you're like, "Whoa." Where'd that come from? And then she, of course, zooms off. Okay, but something I do want to mention
Yeah.
is and I didn't notice this when we saw it, but someone on the internet, like Twitter or something, was talking about that last scene, and they said that the reason she's going towards the sunset is because she's going west, i.e., the Wicked Witch of the West. And when I heard that, I
Oh,
was like, "Oh my god." I was like,
I didn't even
like,
notice
that's the
that.
detail, like, when I read that, I got chills down my spine. I was just thinking to myself, "That's such a good little detail that I'm glad that they don't explicitly mention the movie, but it's for people to really find out and tell people, like, 'Hey, this was a cool little
Yes.
additional,'" and it made me
Oh, so
appreciate
much
that
of
scene
that.
even more. And I was like,
Mhm.
'cause it she's going west, she's heading off to the sunset, that's rises in the east, sets in the west, and it's just such a added
She's
little
going to
Easter
Los Angeles, where she'll be accepted and
literally.
loved.
She'd love it here.
Oh, we should have a great time. We
Mhm.
would hang out.
Yeah. We
I didn't
welcome her,
notice
we
that
welcome
either. That's a beautiful little detail.
right? Isn't that beautiful?
There's another one that I like noticed but didn't notice that I need to bring up right now. So when her and Metamorable are, I think it's literally at the beginning of The Wizard and I. When she first is like, "Ah,
Oh,
you're
like, talking
powerful.
and
Hey,
stuff?
that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Come to the school."
Mhm.
Um, they have like a little moment together. Michelle Yeoh is singing, and they hold hands for a moment, and then they go around a pillar and they break hands at the pillar. Does that make
Mm,
sense? Like there's like a pillar and they're like walking and like their
yeah.
hands like break off at the pillar. And at first when I saw that with you, I was like in the back of my mind, it was like, oh, that's kind of like a weird blocking choice. It looks a little awkward. It looks a little funky. And then fast forward TikTok, right? God bless TikTok. Somebody on
Right.
TikTok brought up, and to be fair, I didn't fact check it. So like maybe this is crazy and I'm a terrible person, but they were talking about how it's superstition like to not like break hands, to not like split the pole is what they were calling it. They were like,
Mm,
don't split the pole. Kind of reminded me of like don't cross streams, which is another thing totally unrelated. But they were
mm,
like, yeah, don't split the pole. It has some sort of superstition around, characters. Like if you split the pole, it's like bad luck in some way. And I was
mm.
like, oh wait, that was fucking intentional. That was intentional that they split the pole,
Interesting.
because at first they're like happy characters. Everything's totally fine. They have a great relationship. And we know how that ends in even just part one. And so it's like, I see what you did there, John Chu. I see what you did. That was an
Yeah,
intentional little bit of blocking that I underestimated when I first
yeah.
saw it. So props to him.
And bless TikTok for the people that will dissect a movie. 'Cause it's like,
Yeah.
I'm very, very present in movies, and I'm not thinking about Easter eggs that much, and, there were some obvious ones, like the slippers that are silver in the film.
Yes.
So to everyone listening, the ruby slippers do not exist in this film. They are silver, and I learned that because I last weekend, I watched an hour and a half long kind of, YouTube history of The Wizard of Oz, like, from the writer of the first book to today at Wicked. And something that they mentioned was that the silver slippers, like those are the original slippers, like from the book. But when they made the film, they were using Technicolor, so they created the slippers as red. But supposedly, Warner Brothers owns the rights to them being red ruby slippers, and this is Universal's movie, and they can't use it. I could be
If
totally
that's what it
wrong.
is. Oh
Right? I
my
could be totally wrong.
God.
This is something I read actually on TikTok. They didn't really mention it in the video, but yeah,
Wow.
I gotta put
If
that out
that's
there.
true, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I didn't know why. I knew that they were like they needed to be different for some reason. They
yeah,
are the same shoe. Slight spoiler
yeah,
alert for the second part, but they are the same shoe. I mean, that's why they
yeah.
were kind of highlighted.
It's
You could sort of
they're
catch that.
Nessa's shoes, yeah.
Yeah. I love how you can we talk about Nessa for a second? Okay, because you had this like look in your eyes when you said her name.
Mhm.
Elaborate. What are your thoughts on Nessa?
So, as I mentioned earlier, this movie did a very good job of kind of stretching out character lines, getting more analysis of the characters, more character development, longer film, etc., etc. The stage musical, you don't see too much of Nessa. I saw the stage musical for the third time in 2021, and I don't really remember Nessa being a huge character. She's very significant, but in the film they gave her a lot more scenes, a lot more camera time, and they I don't know, they really drilled in the fact that she very much betrays her sister and does not stand up for her sister. Um
Well, I'm so hesitant to make the joke that I was about to make. I don't think I'm gonna make that joke. I take it back before
Oh.
saying it. Anyways, please continue. I didn't say it, and I implied it, and it's still not as good. But
Oh,
she
the joke
doesn't
that
stand up for her sister.
and that's very blatantly clear in the Ozdas ballroom scene, which I love what they did with that scene. It's so heartbreaking, so beautiful. Honestly, kind of a tipping point for both characters, both of our leads. Um, and something that Kim, you and I chatted about after we saw the film was there's a big theme about desire and wanting something more than what you have and kind of like what you will do to get there. Like every character has something that they desire, something that they want, whether that be getting the girl. Like Bach wants Glinda, and he'll do anything in his power to get to her. And what he does is kind of shitty and unethical.
Mm.
And Nessa will do everything in her power to not be an outsider, and by doing that, she doesn't stand up for her sister. And Glinda will do anything in her power to get what she wants, and we see a lot of development with her character, et cetera, and I don't know, I just thought that was a really interesting theme that I didn't notice in the musical, but I noticed more in the movie, and I think it really shows that each character has good and evil in them, and it's kind of hard to pinpoint. It's like this character is fully evil because you kind of understand their intentions. You see why Nessa betrays her sister. Like I can it's not obvious. Like she was kind of an underground person. She was pampered her whole life, and she doesn't want to be like that. She wants to be a normal person. And I mean, I don't think what she did was right, but I see her intentions on why she did that, or why Bach did what he did, or Glinda. So yeah, that kind of went on a tangent a little bit, but That's how I felt about Nessa's character. Aside from the house falling on her in Act 2, I don't really remember. Oh, doesn't she
Bit of a
Oh,
spoiler
sorry,
for the
yeah,
second
you
part.
can
It's
edit
okay, I
that
can
out.
bleep that. Yes, that's my understanding. I've never actually seen the musical. Well, we talked about this. I saw the
Bootleg?
musical, but I didn't see the musical.
Yeah.
I was just around and watching slime tutorials on YouTube, but I've never actually seen the musical. I will be seeing it in probably January or so, because I will be giving my money and support to that show because you should because it's incredible.
Support live
But yeah,
theater.
yeah, always, always and forever. Um, as I say, as I literally watched the musical. Anyways, on a totally different topic, um, I don't know what we were just talking about. Can I ask you a question though, Aaron?
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, but let's start with this. When we talk about the second part, this is not a spoiler at all. I mean, we all know the songs enough. What would you say is the song that you're most excited for to see in the second film?
The song I'm most excited to hear and see is "No Good Deed." That is
Ooh.
Elphaba's
Mhm.
kind of big solo number in Act 2. It has some of the most beautiful runs and musical notes. It's such a cool and powerful song, and I didn't really know the song too much when I was a kid, and it's kinda like a recent discovery, was this song called "No Good Deed," and Cynthia Erivo, I think, has some of the best vocals out of any living artist right now, so I'm very excited to hear what she does with that song.
Yeah, I think that'll be again beautifully heart wrenching in the way that it needs to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mhm.
really getting chills just talking about this.
Yeah.
We're like, it's
Oh,
gonna be
it's
great,
gonna be
we know.
incredible.
10 out of 10. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've talked a little bit and we haven't like fully settled on this whole part. The fact that this is a musical split into two films. Now,
Mhm.
historically, when Hollywood does an adaptation and splits something into two films, it's not necessarily always warranted. We could talk about, I think, a quick little thing on Hunger Games. I do think Mockingjay deserved two parts, but I don't think that they developed it quite enough in the way that I wish they would have. So I
Mm.
think it was worthy of two parts, but it didn't fully land in the way that it needed to for the two parts. But there are many other examples of, adaptations that have been split into two parts that people are like, oh, so this is just a money grab.
Yeah.
However, God, not even to talk about The Hobbit, which was split into three parts. That's the whole thing. Anyways, however, with this, it kind of felt perfect, and I'm curious to hear
Mhm.
your thoughts on it as well. But the
Yeah.
general consensus is that the musical itself, which is roughly around the 2 hour 40 something minute, including intermission, um, the musical itself is known to be very densely packed with story. And
Yes.
so the general
Mm.
consensus on this is that this was really one of those stories that deserve two parts. The
Yes.
first part is its own, and the second part just expands so much upon it. Do you think that we had a good pacing with this one? Do you think that we'll have a good pacing with the second one?
Yes. But I didn't I didn't think it was worthy of 2 parts until I actually saw it. I
Okay.
When I heard that it was gonna be 2 parts, I was honestly kind of frustrated because I
Yeah.
was like, "The musical is so well done, I loved it, whatever, whatever." Actually, backtrack, edit that out. I'm gonna re-answer the question. Uh, yes, I do like the fact that they made it into 2 parts, and I didn't think that before. When they released the trailer, I was honestly kinda frustrated and a little annoyed that I knew it was gonna end with Defying Gravity, and I was like, "I wanna hear more, I wanna hear the whole thing." But then when I saw the film, I don't know, I really thought it was warranted to be into 2 parts because I think a critical note I have about the musical is that it is very fast and a lot happens in the first act, and they really cram in a ton of story. And I almost find the character development to be very, very fast in the musical. They
Mhm.
go from enemies to enemies to enemies to now they're best friends, and it just feels a little bit
Yeah.
forced and almost like, "Hey, we need to pick it up. It's time." Like people are getting antsy and they need to get out of the theater for intermission. Like it just feels really rushed. And what I think the movie did so well was they allowed the character development to develop naturally,
Mhm.
and I thought it was beautifully done, and honestly, one of the smoothest 2 hours and 40 minutes I've ever experienced, and I think it being a
Yeah,
musical helps with that because musical numbers, they go by quickly, they're really fun, eye-catching, but I think this was a really good choice that they did this, and I'm curious to see what they do with part 2 because I don't think this is necessarily subjective, I would say more objective, but, like, the first act has it's a more interesting. There's more memorable songs in the first act as opposed to the second act. I've heard through the grapevine that they're possibly bringing in Dorothy into the second act to kind of bring in
I've
some
heard those rumors
familiarity.
too. I think
Because
that's
we
gonna be a
see
really
her
bad
in the
idea if they do.
What'd you say?
I think it's gonna be a really bad idea if they do, but I've also heard those rumors that they're gonna
Yeah.
bring in Dorothy. I think it's like
Mhm.
sorry, not to super interrupt you. When it comes to Dorothy, she's mythic, right? She's
Mm.
like The Wizard of Oz came out in 1939, which I will say this until the end of time. 1939 was also the start of World War II. It was the year
Woo!
that Germany invaded Poland. Fascinating. It was also the year that one of the most well-known films of all time came out. Just, that's how time works. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it came out in 1939. This is quite nearly 100 years ago at this point.
Oh my
We're
god.
not too far off from it,
Yeah.
which is insane, and it still holds up in a lot of ways. Not in all ways, but in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. But because of that reason, and because it's one of the most iconic films of all time, Dorothy is mythic in that way. And I'm probably saying that because we've talked about Hunger Games, and I have the President coin in the back of my head saying that.
Hmm.
But she is like she's untouchable. She was Judy Garland. Like you could never ever recast that and have everybody be happy, and it's just going to
Mhm.
be tough no matter what, and it's going to be tough no
Yeah.
matter how you write her in. You could literally have like Jesus could be reincarnated in the body of a woman and cast as Dorothy in Wicked Part 2, and still a bunch of people would be like,
Yeah.
that's not my Dorothy, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I I'm honestly kind of excited to see what they do with it, only
Really?
because yeah, 'ca I love The Wizard of Oz, it's one of my favorite movies, and but I think what they're gonna do is I think they're very aware that The Wizard of Oz is a very protected film, and it sits very high with a lot of people's kind of favorite movies or lots of memories. They grew up with it, whatever. So I think they're going to take really good care of it, and I think be very loose with it. I don't think there's going to be a lot of Dorothy. She might not have any lines. I mean, you see in the beginning of. Is this a spoiler? I'm not sure. I'm just gonna say
Say
it
it and I'll
anyway.
bleep
Whatever.
it out if I need to.
Okay. Well, for those that have seen it, that will see it, whatever, there is a very short shot in the beginning of the film when we go from, I think, right into No One Mourns the Wicked, our opening number, and you see it's like this wide shot kind of swinging into the Emerald City, and you see on the left side of frame our fabulous four. You got the Lion, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and Dorothy.
You're
And it kind
such
of
a director of
alludes.
photography. Not even I would say left side of frame, I feel like. Anyways, go on.
It's my job, it's my job. I mean, also, yeah. And, uh, you see them, like, walking on the Yellow Brick Road into the Emerald City, and that was the moment where I was like, "They're gonna show up again in part 2." And
Yeah,
I
if
think
if you
that
show them there, it does feel like
right?
yeah.
And I think, and they kinda marketed the film to add parts of Dorothy, Wizard of Oz in it. Like, in the trailer, you see the slippers, you see you see kind of, like, silhouettes of the kind of the Fab Four, and I think they did that because they knew that most people general public outside of theater people don't know Wicked that well. They know The Wizard of Oz, but I think
Mhm.
they've almost kinda marketed the movie calling it like the untold story of the Wizard of Oz or like about the witches of Oz before Dorothy dropped in. I think that's actually what they called the film, like in like a synopsis, like a short little sentence about it.
Mhm.
So I think they're gonna make Dorothy a subsection of the film. I don't think they're gonna redo any of the scenes, i.e., when she shows
Yeah.
up, because she's in the musical, but she's a silhouette behind a sheet. I think. from what I remember.
I love
Uh,
it.
right? Uh, so
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Side note, but on just like the adaptation from a stage musical to a film.
Mhm.
Like I think this was an incredibly faithful adaptation in a lot of
Yes.
ways, but of course there
Mhm.
was an expanding upon some of these emotional moments. Even in expanding upon some of the songs, like I mean, Popular. We already talked about Defying Gravity, but Popular also is a bit extended. The whole scene of it. Um, what was I going to say on this? Oh my god, what was I talking about? Literally, like right now, my brain is
Um,
melting. Like a bucket of water just got thrown on it. We were talking about Dorothy. We were talking about the Yellow Brick Road. So that's the whole movie. I don't know what I was saying. Oh my god. Does your brain ever do this? My brain does
oh,
this
all the time.
too much. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'll just say something else. What's on my little list of bullet points to talk about? Oh, this is random. Is Elphaba prophetic? Oh no, 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 no. Here's what I was gonna say. Okay, we'll go back to it. You're talking about the stage adaptation. So going from a stage musical to a film. So, very faithful adaptation overall. However, one thing that you and I talked about a little bit, but I kind of want to bring it here and I want to discuss a little further, more in depth, is because I've never seen the stage musical. When Defying Gravity happens and when Elphaba flies in the stage musical, my understanding of it is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that obviously she's a human being on a stage, so she lifts up in the air, she has the broomstick with her. The
Oh,
assumption,
is
yeah,
this what
because
we
like
chatted about after the film with the
for a
broom?
second, yeah, because I was like,
Yeah.
okay, so in the film, it's played off as if like she does the spell and nothing happens, and then the broomstick moves and it comes to her. She sort of takes that as her sign. Okay, now the broomstick can fly, so I'm gonna hop on the broomstick. Falls out, has that beautiful moment with her inner child, and then grabs the broomstick, is able to fly and flies around. However, we see her in a way that like she is flying. The broomstick is next to her. So I sort of took that as like, oh, this is the film telling us that Elphaba can fly. The broomstick is just an accessory, if anything. She didn't
Mm,
need the broomstick to fly, but it's
yeah.
maybe like what she's just latching onto in that way. Because she physically is flying and the broomstick's just next to her. If the broomstick itself was flying, she would have to be like hanging onto it or sitting on it,
Yeah.
theoretically.
I I thought about this question a lot actually. Because yes, you are right. In the stage musical, she she gets levitated up, and she has the broom in her like left in her right hand or something like that. And when she sings her last note, the battle cry, she physically kind of does like a punch in the air with the broom. So she's never
Hmm.
physically on the broom in the musical. But in the movie, yes, there is a moment, yeah, where she's defying gravity in the broom. She's just holding it like she does in the musical. So I guess yes, that means that she can fly on her own without the broom. Maybe the broom was just kinda like a seat, kinda like how we sit in seats in a car. Um, I don't know. I the kinda poorly reviewed Disney adaptation of Wizard of Oz, I think Oz the Great and Powerful, the one with, James Franco. Clips from that movie have been circling around TikTok as of late, and there's a little scene where James Franco's character, Oz, he asks the Wicked Witch or one of the witches. He's like, "Oh, you don't look like a witch. Where's your broom?" And she goes to him and says, "What would I need a broom for?" So I guess that kind of further establishes that the broom is just an accessory. But they do make a big deal out of it in the movie, though.
They
So
do. And it's like a beautiful ass broom.
yeah, it's
It's like
gorgeous.
this
It's
like gorgeous little
yeah,
twisted, yeah.
yeah. So I don't know because she obviously she rides. So again, I can say that. She uses the broom when she bolts off in the end.
Maybe it just
I don't
gives her
know.
speed. Maybe Elphaba flies. The broom just gives her speed. And that's why she breaks the sound barrier in the end. It's
Mm,
because like she could fly to a certain extent,
yeah,
but like the
or
broom
or
just like speeds
maybe
it up.
or maybe she just can, I mean, we could talk about this in another podcast, but is there a big difference between levitation and flying? Because she's levitating,
Mm.
she's, like, like, physically in one place, but maybe the broom allows her to move around and fly around.
True. And I suppose one could even say if she's defying gravity, is it so cut and dry as to be defying specifically the downward force that is the gravity we know and love? Or perhaps in Oz, gravity is more of an omnidirectional. She can kind of like the broom
That's a
is
good
still
I
flying
don't
her,
know.
you know?
That's such
We
a
gotta dive
science
into the
question.
physics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the physics of Wicked just don't they're not aligning. Yeah,
Yeah. The physics of Wicked just doesn't make any sense,
yeah.
guys.
It's like, do they have
Another
gravity in
question that
Oz?
I had that I want to like bring up to you if you have any insight or thoughts on this is Elphaba prophetic? Because my takeaway from the movie is that she is a little bit, but I want to know, is that naturally part of her character? Did you also take that away from the film? Am I just like overthinking things because I'm obsessed with this now?
Explain to me prophetic. What does that
Prophetic,
word
like can
mean?
see the future.
Oh, like prophecy? Um,
Because she has, here's why I say that. Here's what I took away from this. And again, I might just be overthinking it. These might be little details that aren't necessarily to make her prophetic, but more that she just has like a deeper understanding of things or coincidences. Who's to say? The two things that I'm pointing to are, one, she has a line in The Wizard and I where she's like, "Oh, I have this vision of all of Oz
mm,
celebrating me."
yep,
And
uh-huh,
that is like clearly lyrically that's like a hint at, okay, you guys are looking for something and it might not be exactly what you think it's going to be later
yeah.
on. But
It's so sad.
also, yeah, oh god, just like no one mourns the wicked, sad
They
and beautiful,
do,
and it
they
has so much
yeah,
emotion. Even if you aren't familiar with Wicked, even if you aren't like from that, you can feel it enough that like you're there in that scene, even though you don't have all the context.
mhm.
um but yeah, so anyway, sorry, she has that one line in The Wizard and I where she's like, oh, like I think Alice is going to celebrate me, and then later on she has like a quick, quite literal sort of vision of Dr. Dillamond in a cage, and has that sort of like come into
Oh,
her.
yeah, she does. She
Yeah.
has kind of a "That's So Raven" moment.
Yeah, just the like
Yeah, I was like,
eyeball
"Whoa,"
thing.
yeah.
Is that
Um, I don't know, I never thought about that. The Wizard and I kinda foreshadowing, I viewed more as a she's, like, I don't wanna say naive because that's almost kind of a negative term, but she's a dreamer, she's hopeful. So I never viewed it as, like, she's foreseeing the future necessarily, I thought it was more of, like, a crafty way that they did the lyrics when they wrote it. But now that you mention it, I do remember that little "That's So Raven" moment in the film. I mean, she's got more powers than anyone else in her kind of circle, so maybe she is. Um,
hmm.
yeah, I'm
It'd
not
be
sure. I gotta
interesting
see
to see
all
if that's something that like is continued in the second one or not. Like if they do,
yeah.
like if that is, again, I could just be reading into it. That could have been again more of like a hint of she's not necessarily prophetic, but she just has like a deeper understanding of this world, and almost like as if it's like anxiety in that way, where sometimes you know you have anxiety about something and it comes true, but it's not the
Oh,
same as
yeah.
being like prophetic and seeing the future.
Mhm.
It's just, oh, I can think these things through in a way
Yeah.
that the people around me aren't thinking them through. It could just be that, because it wasn't so clearly, obviously, like we didn't have the effect of like, oh, it's so heavily a vision. It could be
Yeah,
interpreted as just being one
that's
way
true.
or the other. But it would be interesting to see in the second one, do they establish that as something, or was that
Mhm.
just for the moment?
I don't know.
I feel
That's a
like that
good
would change
question.
your character a lot, though.
Yeah. I mean, she's got enough powers.
Yeah, she's fine. She doesn't need any more. She's fine. She's
Yeah.
good. We love her and she's beautiful and she's powerful. I don't think she needs too much more. Don't do that thing like we did in Star Wars with Rey. Love her. She's one of my favorite characters, but she didn't need to have healing powers. That was overboard. That was too much.
Yep.
Take it back. Retcon that. Retcon that whole movie. We're getting off topic. I'm getting off topic because I rant about Star Wars a lot. Okay, I have another question for you though. So, my question is, if you were an animal in Oz, which animal would you be and why?
Hmm. I mean, I guess in the period of the when the Wicked movie is set, I don't know if I wanna be an animal because they'll just get put me in a cage. Um,
That's
that's a
true.
trick question.
That's
I
true.
If I was an animal, I mean, Dr. Dilliman is dope. Like,
Yeah.
I would
He's the literal
totally
goat.
he is the GOAT. I'd be the student that would totally go into his office hours just to, like, hear him speak, be all prolific and intelligent and scholarly. Um, I mean, I feel like being that lion would be kinda dope because then I guess you'd be
Mhm.
cowardly as you get older, but then you get to hang with Dorothy and she seems
That's another
cool.
spoiler, which is
Oh,
okay. I mean, like, it's
I feel like at
hard
this
because
point,
this
if
is
you're on the
all one
internet
story. Yeah.
if you're on the internet, you
Mhm.
know that Fiero, Scarecrow, Bach is the Tin Man, and that little lion is the Cowardly Lion. So,
Yeah. Nessa gets a house dropped on her.
yeah.
It's fine.
Mama, a house behind you.
There's a house. Watch out. Take your shoes off after you get hit by the
Yeah,
house.
literally. Yeah. So I'll say the lion because I don't wanna be Dr. Dillamond. I wanna, like, hang out with him.
Okay. Yeah. That seems valid. He's got like his own, like, he's very established. I think he's probably the coolest goat in all of Oz. He's definitely like the cool teacher that you would want
He's
to
the
hang out
goatest
with.
goat.
Clearly.
Yeah, the goatest
Yeah.
goat.
Oh, and he's Peter Dinklage. Like, that just makes it even better.
Yeah.
Oh, we love. So I did write my answer down here, and I must tell you to
Oh,
spread the word of how perfect it would be to be this animal. Because I've thought of this for many years, not necessarily in the context of Oz, but this is like an ongoing random discussion question.
yeah.
Sometimes people would be like, "Oh, if you could be an animal, what would you be and why?"
Mhm.
And I have thought about this long and hard, and I have always and forever chosen a duck. I think it would be perfect to be a duck. And yeah, you're tilting your head. You're like, "Why would you want to be a duck? That seems like a silly
What a
little creature."
neat Okay, I'm so
Dude,
curious why.
okay, you can walk, waddle, right? You can
Yeah.
swim, and you can fly. You can
Oh,
literally do it all.
okay.
What's stopping you? Nothing at all. Also, like, the average duck, and I suppose this doesn't really, I don't know if this does apply to the context of Oz, but like, if you're a duck in the real world, you're living large, man. Go to a park, get a little bread, you're good. You're like having
Mhm,
a nice
so
life.
you can do your business anywhere
You can do your
at
business
any time.
anywhere. You probably have duck friends. Again, you can also do
Yeah,
that little thing too where
that's a
like
good
you, like, fly to, like, a glide on the water. That's so
yes,
cool.
that's a very good answer. Yeah, I like that. If I was a duck, I'd live in northern Minnesota, like, in the Boundary Waters, where it's, like, beautiful, pristine
Yeah?
little lakes. Because ducks, they're kinda like pack animals, like, they're always with a bunch of other ducks. They're very social, there's always something to do, someone to see. They're very
Mhm.
vocal. You hear them a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and they don't take shit. Like, they run the
A duck
parks.
will fight you. A duck will
Yeah.
fuck you up.
Ooh, you know what? Being a duck in Central Park would be so much fun. You get to live
Oh,
in the
yes, hell yeah.
city,
You get all
right?
the tea too, because you could just overhear, like, I'm sure that you could understand English somehow, right? Like, you could
Oh,
just
for sure.
overhear and be like, "Oh
And all
my god,
that
that's
bread,
crazy. What
and
happened
it's
to
probably
that
good
guy
bread too,
in Midtown? That's crazy."
right?
Not too soon. Um, Stunning. Okay, cool. So, a couple of other quick questions just on sort of the adaptation of things, and then we will slowly get into our sort of final end of podcast questions. But I wanted to ask you, I lost track of the question that I was going to ask. Okay, we have to talk about this. The original Broadway cast, Idina Menzel and Kristen
Mm,
Chenoweth, making an
yes,
appearance. Thoughts?
yes. I so, uh, I think the listener should know that Kim listened to the soundtrack before we saw the film.
Oh, yeah. And we saw it like a day after it came out, 1 or
Like
2 days.
2 yeah, 1 or 2 days, yeah. I did not listen to the soundtrack because I knew there was gonna be little spoilers, and when
Mhm.
Kim and I met up before the film, she goes to me and says, "There was a spoiler that I heard in one of the songs," and she's like, "You'll see it in the film, I'm assuming," and I was like, "Okay." So I was kind of I had a little ear pointed up, trying to hear it and also see it. And when it showed up, I was totally gagged. I was so in shock. I
Good.
was I love Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth. I grew up with them, so when they appeared on screen, I think I kinda looked at Kim and I was like, "That's it. That's the
I
story
think we
that."
had like a little side eye moment. I
Yeah,
was like, yep.
'cause, and I remember thinking to myself, "I'm so glad I didn't listen to this," because I was like, "I love that I saw this live."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they killed it, and it was so fun, and I don't know. I They were there for a perfect amount of time. They weren't there for too long, but it wasn't like oh, they're in one shot and then they're done. Like it was a perfect little homage to the original while also not overshadowing the new current leads.
Yeah. I felt very much the same way too, where,
Yeah.
it was the perfect amount of time for us to see them, have their moment, really respect that, like, this is the original Broadway cast. These people are so near and dear to us in many ways, but especially when it comes to Wicked. And so
Yeah,
to
they
have them
created
there
it.
is like
Yeah.
they will always be a part of Wicked. And yet also, yeah, and they were in there in a way that like still made sense to the story. Like you were still learning something. The story was moving forward. It wasn't just a hey guys, they're here. It was like, this makes sense. They're here in a way that fits into the film. If you didn't even know who they were, you'd be fine. But if you do know who they are, you would like watch that and just have this little heartfelt moment, like we all did, of being like, they're here, they're stuck in the film forever. They are wicked history, always and forever.
Mhm.
And they have these cute little roles. And yeah, it was just nice. It was very
Loved
nice.
it. Loved it.
Okay. Any like last quick thoughts on just the difference or similarities between the actual Broadway musical and the film? Was there anything big that we were missing?
Um, I feel like we've hit all the big marks. But I do want to reiterate that what they did with this movie is exactly what movies should do. They they took an already amazing musical and experience and used what movies are good at, which is stuff you can't do on a stage, nothing practical. They had great CGI. They had massive sets that they built, all like hand built sets that are bigger than any stage in the world, and they utilize close ups really well and transitions
Mhm.
and sound effects, like everything that a movie should do well, they did well with this one. And I think that's what makes it so good is that it wasn't just a carbon copy of the stage musical. They really took kind of the cinematic aspect of a movie and made it as best as it could be. Like, I mean, they had the budget, so that's one thing, but I was very impressed by the technical elements, the acting, really every aspect of this film was very well done. Um, so I was very impressed.
Glad to hear it. I mean, again, we saw it together, so like we kind of already had a
Yeah.
little bit of this discussion, which was great, but it's nice to like sit here and dive into it a bit more deeply and talk about things that also those little like TikToks, things that like we discovered
Mhm.
after the film, like looking back on it. And yeah, really, really well done. I'm glad that like at the very least, it seems like everyone who loves the musical Wicked was happy with this. And that's what
Yes.
matters. That's ultimately
For the
like the core
fans, yeah.
audience here. Yeah. All right. So we have a brief little pop quiz for you. Are you
Okay.
ready? Are you
Yes.
excited? Are you super thrilled?
Yes.
Because it's going to
I'm super
be
excited.
so hard. Okay, buckle up.
Yeah.
It's time for a movie theater butter pop quiz. First question. In real life, where does the name Elphaba come from?
The real name Alphaba comes from the 3 letters of the original author's name. It's like L. Frank Baum or something. It's like LFB, Elphaba.
Perfect.
Yes.
Absolutely perfect.
And I saw this on
Yes.
the TikTok, so I'm very well read.
Good. Amazing. Second and final question for our little pub quiz. It is a green or pink speed round. Okay. So
Okay,
I'm going to
okay.
list off a famous character and I need you to tell me quick. Are they green? Are they pink? Are you
I
ready?
got this. I'm on.
All right. Time starts now. Shrek,
Green.
Kirby,
Pink.
Gamora.
Pink? No, fuck, she's green. She's green,
Good.
she's green, she's green.
Barbie, Barbie,
Pink.
Barney.
Purple.
Ah, good one. You got it. You got it. Kermit,
Green.
Miss Piggy.
Pink.
And final question. This is the hardest one of them all. The
Okay.
M&M who owns two pairs of shoes.
Oh, green, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she's
There was a whole
kinda
thing.
sassy, right?
Yeah,
With
she's
the long
sassy.
eyelashes?
Yep. She wore tennis shoes once and the world freaked out.
She's the one with the heels, right? The white heels?
Yeah. She wore
Oh,
heels like historically for the longest time. She
mhm.
changed into tennis shoes one day and the world went insane.
As they should.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't,
What a
like,
time.
unserve someone, like, you
The
gotta
debimbification of green M&M.
yeah.
That's another episode of this
Never
podcast.
take the heels from a diva. Never.
Yeah.
Never, never.
Facts. All right. So, our final question. How do you think this film is best watched? In what context, time of day, what sort of people do you want with you? What's kind of the general vibe of how you think Wicked is best watched?
Wicked is best watched in a full movie theater to get all the reactions live, preferably with good people that I guess have a connection to the story. Like if you do have a connection to Wicked, watch it with people that also do, because you can kind of geek out together in the theater. Um, Time of day does not matter because the movie will be good at any time of day. But my last requirement is no singing in the
Yes.
theater.
Oh my God. I'm glad that
No
you and I are
singing.
on the same page because you and I are both sane human
Yes.
beings. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
No singing in the theater.
Yes.
If it's a designated singing theater, sure. But no.
Yeah. There's a reason that those screenings exist. I won't be present. And I'm not saying this as someone who's like, I hate singing. I love to sing. I love musical theater. I'm a big theater geek. However, singing and talking does not belong in a movie theater. If you want to do that at
Mhm.
home, go for it. If you want to go to the sing along version of Wicked, have so much fun. Let me know how it is. But in our regular AMC Laser, AMC Prime screening, shh,
Damn right. Damn right.
and mic drop.
Only
I'm done.
time I think it was like socially acceptable to sing in a movie theater during something was I went to a theatrical screening of Bo Burnham's Inside in
Oh,
2021, I think, or 2022, and that film hits hard for everybody individually.
mm,
Um, and that was the moment it felt right for people to outwardly interact with this film. We had all
interesting.
watched it inside in our homes because it came out only on Netflix. And then for when the world was opening up for it to come out in theaters, that was the only time I felt like it was right for us to sort of outwardly interact. And so many people in the theater I was watching it did sort of have their moment. And that was great, but not Wicked. Definitely not Wicked. Okay, so last thing, where can the people find you? Where can people on the internet be like, wow, this is a cool person with amazing opinions. I would like to follow them. Do you have some sort of public social media?
I do. So my Instagram is Aaron Butwinick DP. That's AARON BUTWINICK I post my work on that account, and I'm pretty active in my stories. So yeah, send me a DM if you agree with anything I've talked about today, or even disagreed. I would love to chat about Wicked with you, or really any other movie. So that's where you can find me.
Hell yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being on this episode. Thank you for being amazing. Thank you for
Of
coming to see
course,
the movie with me in the first place.
of
And yeah,
course.
hell
This was so
yeah.
much fun. Thank you. I love talking about Wicked with people that also love Wicked, and yeah, we had so much fun. It was so much fun to see that with you.
Together, we're unlimited.
Unlimit well, in Act 2, not so much.
Spoilers, everyone dies. Okay, thank you so much for watching Wicked. Witched. Thank you so much for watching
Wicked,
Witched.
wicked.
I
It's
know how to speak English. Well, it sounds like that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Movie Theater Butter, a TillKim Productions podcast. Make sure to follow us where you're listening and on our Instagram page at the Movie Theater Butter Podcast. And hey, it couldn't hurt if you gave us a quick 5-star rating on this platform. All right, I'm done. See you next episode.